They say the forest whispers only to those who still believe. But in the far north, those whispers once spoke the language of the gods. The wind moves through the pines like a sigh. Snow drifts over a silver valley, where sunlight struggles to break through. The world feels ancient, not dead but sleeping. And somewhere within that silence, something gleams. A pulse of light. A shimmer too soft to be seen, too alive to ignore. To the Norse this was no trick of the eye. It was life itself, divine, breathing, radiant. They called it Ljosolfar, the Light Elves. Beings of beauty and power, spirits of sunlight, children of the dawn. Before men built their villages, before kings ruled the cold north, there were 9 great realms, 9 layers of reality wrapped around the world tree Yggdrasil. In those days the gods of Asgard watched from above, the giants of Jotunheim lurked in chaos beyond the mountains, and deep below, the dwarves forged wonders in their caves of fire and iron. But between those worlds, high and shining, lay Alfheim, the realm of light and grace, home of the elves. It is said that when the Allfather Odin divided the realms among his divine kin, he gave Alfheim as a gift to his son Freyr, god of sunlight, peace and fertility. A curious gift, given when Freyr was only a child in celebration of his first tooth. Yet even in that there was meaning. 4 teeth are the tools of growth, and Freyr, like Alfheim itself, would one day nourish life. Freyr ruled not through war but through harmony. His power was that of balance, the turning of seasons, the quiet glow after long darkness, the laughter of harvest returned. Through him the Light Elves flourished. They were his kin and his servants, but also his reflection. Each one shimmered with a beauty no mortal could bear to look upon for long. The Prose Edda tells us that the Light Elves were fairer than the sun to behold. Their hair gleamed like molten gold, their eyes as blue as glacial lakes, their skin so luminous that even their shadows shone. They were not mortal-sized sprites nor winged creatures. That came centuries later. The Ljosolfar were tall, majestic, almost divine. When they walked, the ground awakened with green. When they spoke, the wind changed its course. They lived in palaces of silver and crystal that caught the dawn light and scattered it across the heavens. The rivers of Alfheim glowed with the color of sunrise, and the air itself hummed like a living chord. To humans they were mystery made flesh, the perfection that always remained just beyond reach. Imagine standing at the edge of a northern forest in the Bronze Age. The world feels alive. The bark beneath your hand seems to breathe, the light filters through leaves as if it remembers something. The Norse felt this constantly. They saw no boundary between nature and spirit. Every tree, every stream, every stone held a spark of divine will. And among these sparks, the Light Elves were the brightest of all. But what were they? Spirits? Gods? Ancestral shades? Even the ancients could not agree. Some said they were lesser gods, attendants to Freyr, caretakers of sunlight, keepers of life's gentle mysteries. Others believed they were the spirits of the blessed dead, those whose souls were too pure to wander hell or too peaceful for Valhalla. They became elves of light, guardians of harmony, forever watching over the living. If that is true, then perhaps Alfheim is not a separate world at all, but a mirror of our own, a reflection of the best parts of humanity shining beyond the veil of time. Still, the Light Elves were not idle. They moved between worlds, slipping through shafts of sunlight, appearing in dreams and visions. Poets called upon them for inspiration. Farmers prayed for their favor before planting their fields. When a child laughed, when love bloomed unexpectedly, when an artist found words that seemed to come from nowhere, that was the work of the Light Elves. They were the invisible grace of existence. But even grace can cast shadows. For beneath Alfheim, deep in the roots of Yggdrasil, lay Svartalfheim, the land of the Dakalfar, the Dark Elves. They were not evil, but they were not beautiful either. Pale and silent, they lived in caverns where no sun had ever shone, crafting wonders in the dark, weapons for gods, treasures beyond price, and secrets no one dared to name. Some say they were the same race as the dwarves, shaped by fire and stone. Others whisper they were fallen Light Elves, cast down from Alfheim for disobedience or pride. Light and dark, creation and decay, two halves of the same song. Even in the heart of beauty, shadow stirs. For the Norse knew the world was made of balance. To them, every blessing carried danger, every joy its shadow. The elves, both bright and dark, embodied that truth. Yet it was the Light Elves who lingered in mortal hearts. They became symbols of hope, of life's resilience against winter, of the sun's return after endless night. In the rituals of the ancient North, people left offerings to them. Milk, honey, bits of bread, or a whisper of mead poured upon the earth at dawn. These were not mere superstitions. They were gestures of respect, acknowledgments that the world was shared with unseen beings. To offend an elf was to invite misfortune. To honor one was to walk in harmony with the light. When dawn touched the snow and made it sparkle like glass, people said it was the elves dancing. When the northern lights burned green and silver across the sky, that too was their work, the glow of Alfheim spilling into our world. But light, even divine light, does not last forever. When the age of the Norse gods began to fade, when Christianity came to the north, the old stories began to shift. The gods became demons, the sacred became superstition, and the elves of light began to vanish. But they did not die. They changed. The Ljósálfar became the Huldufolk, the hidden folk. In Iceland, even centuries after conversion, people still spoke of them. They said the hidden folk lived inside the hills, in stones and caves, invisible to human eyes. Sometimes they appeared as tall and beautiful strangers. Sometimes only their voices were heard, singing from the mist. They could bless or curse, help or hinder. Farmers left gifts for them at the edges of their land, and travelers avoided disturbing certain stones, for fear they might belong to the elves. Even today there are roads in Iceland built around boulders said to house the hidden folk. Bulldozers have stopped mid-project because the workers refuse to move the stones. They say it's bad luck to anger what you cannot see. And perhaps they're right. For even now, when the wind moves through the grass and sunlight scatters across the hills, it feels as if something is there, listening, watching, remembering. What if the hidden folk are not gone at all? What if they are simply the light elves hiding in plain sight, their glory dimmed but not destroyed? Through centuries the myth spread, across Europe, across oceans. The light elves became fairies, Sidhi, Fae, smaller, softer but still radiant. The image of the winged fairy we know today is a shadow of Alfheim's brilliance. What once were gods became folklore. What once were worship became dreams. And yet, there is something haunting in that transformation. For even as the world moved forward, humanity refused to let go of the unseen. We forgot their names, but not their presence. Listen to the stories told in every culture, of fairies, angels, luminous spirits, beings of beauty and danger. They all carry the same echo: light, love, awe, and warning. The Light Elves of Alfheim may be the oldest face of that light. The first attempt by humanity to describe the divine not as power or judgment, but as beauty itself. They were not the gods of thunder or war, they were the gods of wonder. And perhaps that's why they are forgotten. Because wonder, though eternal, is fragile. But the North remembers. Even now, in the icy fjords of Norway, people still tell stories of strange lights moving along the horizon. In Sweden, the word alva still means fairy, a direct descendant of Alfr the elf. In Iceland, belief in the hidden folk is so deep that some claim to have seen them, tall, shining figures walking through fog. Maybe it's imagination. Or maybe it's the world remembering itself. Because myths, when stripped of their names and gods, are truths disguised. They speak not of what was, but of what is, the eternal emotions that make us human. Love, awe, fear, hope. And the light elves, in their silent brilliance, embody all of those. They are the feeling of sunlight on your face after a long winter. The gleam in a child's eyes when they see something beautiful for the first time. The stillness before dawn when the world feels alive. They are not gone, they are within the light itself. And maybe that's the greatest secret of Alfheim. It was never somewhere else. It was always here, layered atop our world, hidden in the spaces between sunlight and shadow, life and death, seen and unseen. When the Vikings looked at the horizon and saw the sun break through storm clouds, they saw Alfheim opening. When they closed their eyes in prayer and felt peace, they felt the elves moving near. The gods ruled from Asgard. But the elves, they ruled from within. So if you ever walk beneath the birch trees of the north, and the light shifts suddenly, softer, golden like a breath of memory, don't speak. Just listen. The forest still whispers. And sometimes if you believe enough, it answers. But belief is a fragile thing. When the world grew louder with war, when men turned their faith to kings and crowns, the old lights began to fade. The light elves, once radiant as dawn, grew quiet, not gone but veiled. It is said they withdrew from mortal eyes not out of weakness but out of mercy. For humanity had begun to forget what harmony felt like. The noise of greed, the smoke of iron, the rise of empires, all dimmed the senses once tuned to beauty. And so, one by one, the gates to Alfheim closed. But even in silence they watched. From hidden hills and hollow stones, from moonlit lakes and twilight groves, they lingered, unseen but not unfeeling. And as centuries turned, new names were whispered in their place. In Iceland they became the Huldafolk, the hidden folk, beings both ethereal and familiar, as if light had taken human form. They wore the faces of neighbors, the voices of friends, but shimmered faintly at the edges, like reflections in rippling water. To see them clearly was rare and dangerous. They could bless your land with fertility, or curse it with stillness. They could fall in love with mortals or steal away those who mocked them. The tales were not all gentle, because wonder never is. There was a farmer once, they say, who tried to move a great boulder from his field. His plow broke. His oxen refused to pull. That night, a whisper came through his window, soft, distant, like wind across stone. Do not move what was never yours to move. By morning he found fresh flowers growing around the rock. He left it there until the day he died. In another village, a child vanished into the hills, chasing lights that danced just beyond her reach. For 7 years she was gone. Then one night, during a full moon, she returned, unchanged, still 7 years old. When asked where she'd been, she said, "I was in the land of brightness. They said I must come home before I forgot my name." And though her body was the same, her eyes had changed. They shimmered faintly like moonlit ice. Stories like these spread across the north. Even the most practical men, sailors, shepherds, blacksmiths, spoke of the hidden folk with a kind of quiet respect. No one wanted to test the boundaries of belief. Because deep down they knew, the old light never truly dies. It just changes its shape. As Christianity spread, priests condemned the elves as illusions, even demons. But the people, the storytellers, the mothers, the wanderers, could not unsee what they'd always known. They reshaped the myth to survive. The elves became neither holy nor damned, but somewhere between. Beings caught between heaven and earth, too pure for hell, too wild for paradise. That is the heart of the hidden folk, not fallen angels but forgotten children of the dawn. Even the church in its own way made room for them. In one Icelandic legend, when God created humanity, he asked Eve to show him her children. She presented the ones she had washed and clothed, the clean, visible ones. But the unwashed children she hid away, ashamed. When God asked, "Where are the rest?" Eve lied. And so, God made them invisible. He said, "What is hidden from me shall remain hidden from man." Those children became the hidden folk. It is a story woven with guilt and grace. The idea that the unseen world is born from what we choose to ignore. And perhaps that is the truest form of myth. Not a lie but a mirror. Because if you think of it, the elves have always reflected us. They began as the Light Elves, our dream of perfection, our yearning for beauty unspoiled. Then they became the hidden folk, our conscience, our quiet reminder that nature is watching. And later still they became something smaller, the fairies of modern lore, delicate, playful, safe. But each transformation reveals something about us. We made them smaller as our wonder shrank. We gave them wings when we stopped looking toward the skies. We turned gods into toys and mysteries into metaphors. Yet even in that the old light persists. For though the fairies of stories now live in flowers and moonbeams, they are still echoes of Alfheim, fragments of a divinity that refuses to die. In every era they adapt to our hearts. When we feared nature, they became its protectors. When we sought love, they became its spirits. When we lost faith in magic, they turned into the reminder that it once existed. And so the Light Elves became eternal not through worship, but through memory. But memory is a tricky thing. It changes, distorts, reimagines. And somewhere along the way, darkness crept in again. In medieval Europe, the fair folk became tricksters, changelings, seducers, thieves of souls. They lured travelers into the mist and led them astray. They swapped human babies for their own. They punished those who mocked the unseen, and rewarded those who believed. Sound familiar? It should. It is the same duality the Norse once saw between the light elves and dark elves, creation and destruction, grace and peril. Only the names changed. Because what people once called Ljósálfar became Alfar, and later elves and later still fair folk. Every culture painted them anew, but the canvas was always the same: light, shadow, and the fragile thread between them. Even Tolkien in the 20th century, when he breathed life into his elves of Middle-earth, tall, immortal, radiant, he was drawing from the same root. Tolkien read the prose Edda, studied the old sagas. He understood that elves were not fantasy, they were memory. A living echo of divine beauty, reborn in story. And maybe that's why his elves feel ancient. Because somewhere deep within language itself, the word elf still carries the sound of something sacred. Alfr. It hums like a breath of wind over ice, soft yet eternal. But even Tolkien's elves were mournful, aware of fading, aware of the long dusk approaching. It is as if the Light Elves themselves remember that they were once gods. And that's what makes the myth of Alfheim so haunting. Because it isn't just about shining beings in the sky. It's about us, our longing for purity, our guilt for forgetting it, and our hope that light still watches over us. In the sagas, the Light Elves were said to bring fertility to the world, the turning of seasons, the blooming of crops. Without them, the land would wither. It's tempting to see that as superstition. But what if it's a parable? A warning that when humanity turns away from the sacred balance of nature, the world begins to starve. Perhaps the Light Elves were never literal. Perhaps they are the soul of nature itself, dressed in the language of myth. And if that is true, then maybe they never left. They simply changed form again, from luminous figures to the quiet life force that still hums beneath everything. The same shimmer in morning dew. The same whisper in the forest. The same light that flickers just at the edge of sight when you think you're alone. That is Alfheim, still breathing. But there is another layer to their story, a darker one hidden beneath the glow. Because the Norse did not believe in eternal peace. Even the gods would one day die at Ragnarok, when fire and ice would consume the world. What then would happen to Alfheim? Some legends say the Light Elves will fight beside Freyr, wielding blades of light against the forces of chaos. Others say they will fade completely, returning their radiance to the stars. But a few rare verses, half lost, half remembered, hint at something stranger. That the Light Elves will survive the twilight of the gods. That when the world is remade, they will return, not as servants of Freyr, but as guides to humanity's new dawn. If that's true, then maybe our myths are not backward-looking but forward-reaching. Maybe every story of fairies, of hidden folk, of glowing spirits, is a prophecy, of a light waiting to return when we are ready to see it again. There is beauty in that thought. Because it means the myth of Alfheim is not over. It's only sleeping. And sometimes I think it stirs. When a photographer captures the northern lights and the sky ripples in green fire, isn't that a glimpse of the old realm? When an Icelandic road bends around an ancient rock, left untouched for centuries, isn't that quiet respect for the unseen? When a child leaves milk by the window just in case, isn't that belief reborn in its purest form? The Light Elves may have been the ancestors of our fairy myths, but they are also the descendants of our awe. They are what happens when humans look at the world and whisper, "There must be more than this." They remind us that we come from light, and to light we will return. In the old stories, it was said that those blessed by the Light Elves would carry a glow in their eyes, a mark of favor. But perhaps that glow is something deeper, a spark of remembrance. We all carry it. We all have Alfheim within us. Every time you create beauty, every time you show kindness, every time you choose wonder over fear, that is the Light Elves moving through you. They were never meant to be worshipped. They were meant to be remembered. Because their real power was never in magic or immortality. It was in the simple, radiant truth that light, true light, needs no temple. It shines wherever it's believed in. So when you next step into sunlight and feel warmth bloom across your face, imagine it is the hand of a light elf resting gently upon your cheek, ancient, soft, proud that you still remember. Because maybe, just maybe, the unseen never truly leaves. It waits. For those who still believe. And if you listen closely, in the hush before dawn or the hush after rain, you might hear it. That same ancient whisper the North once knew. We are still here. We never left. The light only hides, until it is needed again. So look for them, not in fairy circles or mountain stones, but in the small miracles of every day. The way sunlight hits glass. The hush of wind through pine. The spark of inspiration that comes from nowhere. Those are the places where Alfheim still breathes. Those are the signs that the forgotten gods of the North still walk beside us, unseen but not unfelt. And maybe, in that knowledge we become a little more like them, radiant, kind, eternal in the quiet ways that matter. Because the greatest gift of the Light Elves was not their power or their beauty or their songs. It was their reminder that light, once seen, never truly fades. It only waits to be found again. If you believe in the unseen, subscribe to Fairy Mystery, where every story hides a secret waiting to be found.